And thank you for tuning in today. You are listening to the Adam Messer Show here on WRUU Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And I have an extraordinary special guest today with me. I'm really excited. I've been trying to get him on the show for a couple months now. And we got the timing lined up. And John Palisano, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Hello. It's amazing to be here. I'm really excited that everything lined up for this today.
Oh, me too.
So wonderful. Thank you for having me. And hello, everybody listening out there.
hello. So for those of you who maybe have never been familiar with John is an author. He won the Bram Stoker Award. I think it was 2016, right, John?
I believe so.
Yeah. And
right.
He's the current sitting president of the Horror Writers Association. I know that y'all have heard me talking about the HWA as being a member myself. And so I wanted to have John on the show today, y'all, so we could talk about, his writing career, his author, his books, his writing career, and also talk about the Horror Writers Association as an organization, because I feel like it is a really good organization, and the field, like there are so many different genres out there, and horror and gothic. When people think of horror, there's so many different things that they think of when you say horror. What comes to mind, and I think that's one of the cool things about the genre is that horror can cover everything, just like romance can cover everything, and that's one of the things I love about that genre. So excited to have you, Bass. You want to play some live music for us today? All right, so Sebastian is in the studio, y'all. Sebastian Messer is my son, John, and he plays on the show here live. He's a guitarist, and
All right.
Yeah,
Man,
so
my own heart. But
awesome.
I got to hear what kind of guitar he's playing though.
He is playing. What is that? An Ovation?
Yeah.
All right. So John, I have to put it on speakerphone so you can hear it. But here goes Sebastian Messer, y'all. Wow, Bass, that was awesome. Can you hear me now, John? Yeah, it's so weird with the soundboard. I have to unplug you and then hit the little speakerphone so you can hear it on that. But it's so cool because he's been playing since you're like 13, and he's 19 now. He just turned 19, so
All right.
And you play too?
Yeah, in my other life, I'm a guitarist and frontman for a rock band called The Quick and the Dead. I've been playing since I was 13.
No way.
Yeah, we toured. We played Atlanta a couple of times with some of my bands. We toured all up and down the Eastern Seaboard growing up. So yeah.
The Quick and the Dead. I remember there was a movie called The Quick and the Dead. That's a cool name.
Yeah, that's where the other guitar player got the title. And that's not my only band. I played in bands like The Afterlife. I played in Smoke and Fire and a lot of bands like that. We opened up for all kinds of acts, everybody from the Misfits to Johnny Thunders and My band, the new band, we just opened up for Queen Nation tribute act at the Starlight Bowl
No way.
out here. Yeah, it was huge, biggest gig I ever played. A huge outdoor half shell place, and
Oh,
it was
dude.
yeah, talk about rock and roll dreams come true,
Oh
right?
my gosh, that's
So
so cool. Like,
yeah,
so that is a whole different. Like, I didn't even know you're a musician, man. But that's such a cool thing. So you've been playing since you were 13.
yeah,
Um, what do you think? Like, I know it sounds really crazy, but what do you think about Sebastian's playing? It's pretty good, isn't it?
it's beautiful. He's got a beautiful feel. It's very melodic, very beautiful. Very really clean playing. I love it. Reminded me kind of a Jimmy Page meets Ry Cooder kind of a thing, which right up my alley. I dug it, man. Ovation's nice. Beautiful acoustic guitars.
Oh,
Yeah,
he started off like it's so crazy. But when he was 13, he was like, hey Dad, I want to get a guitar. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, that's cool. You know how it is when they're kids, And
yeah.
we used to go to this pawn shop, and they sell like electronics, and they sell all this cool musical equipment and like tools and stuff like that. So we go catting around and just hanging out and whatever, and we go in there and they had this guitar. What?
It was a Stratocaster body, but it's a Washburn Lion. That was the model of it.
Yeah, and they had that and
hot
the
rod.
amp for like $100, right, on sale.
I think it was 100 for it all.
Yeah, it was for the whole package and the cords, the cables, all that. And I think they even gave you some strings too, didn't there, or something like that? I
I
can't
think we
remember.
went to Randy Woods.
Oh, that's right. We went to Randy Woods because that was before you knew how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we went down the street and got them to restring it for us. I think it was like maybe $10 or something like that. Randy Wood, talking about like just world renowned luthier. He's right here in our backyard, John.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so we go to his shop, and the folks over there are great. So we go there, we get them to restring it for us, and then he starts, he starts playing, and then like I think you took like 2 lessons from John.
Yeah, I think so.
John
Willis.
Willis. Yeah, super nice guy. And then like honestly, we just didn't have time. With work schedule and all that. So he's been playing this stuff. You've been playing like what, since like 13?
Yeah.
You learned most of this
I think
on
it
your
was
own
like
from
right before I turned 13. I was 12,
Yeah.
turned 13.
Yeah. But I mean, like, John, this is the cool thing about like where the time that we live in. I think, like when we were kids, there wasn't YouTube.
No.
You basically have the world at your feet right now, right? And
Yeah, there's a library of learning for everything that's just unbelievable.
yeah, and I mean, like, and I know I'm his dad and all, but I'm always blown away just listening to him play because I love music. And like for you talking about like the Misfits and opening up for that Queen tribute band or whatever,
Queen Nation. Yeah.
Queen Nation, dude, like I love that kind of stuff. I absolutely love that kind of music. And we were, matter of fact, Sebastian, you got to tell about the records that we got today.
Oh, well, I picked up the new Slipknot We Are Not Your Kind album.
Nice.
But then
Nice.
we found a 1984 pressing of the single Creeping Death. And
The
then it's got
UK
two
pressing.
bonus
Oh,
two bonus
cool.
records. It's
I Am
the
Evil on
Am
the
I
back?
Evil and Blitzkrieg
Yep.
on it.
Yeah.
And it's a UK pressing.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I
Hold
was
it up
like,
to the light. See if it's one of the see-through ones.
look at it, Bess.
Put
Let's
it in the
see.
light. Some of them.
It has like a picture on the front, and it's got
Oh, is it
a
the
group.
picture? Is it the picture?
It's got a
vinyl?
picture of the.
It's got the picture on it, and then it has a picture when Cliff was still alive on it.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, I'll have to send you. I'll have to send you a photo of it, man. But it's, I
Now you can't
love
see
it.
through.
We picked it up. We got this really cool little record store here in town called Grayface Records, and they have. Do you remember that song "Cult of Personality"?
Of course.
Living
yeah,
Color.
Living Color.
They had. I know this is gonna sound crazy. They had a single cassette, and
Oh.
yeah, my Honda. It's a little bit older van. It's in good shape and all, but it's still got a cassette player in it. I mean, it's like a 2004 or something like that, and it's got a cassette player in it. So we popped that thing in. We're like sitting there, turning it all the way up. I was like, "Look in my eyes." Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I love it. I'm not a musician, but I absolutely love listening to live music. Uh,
Cool.
Man. So you've been
Cool.
playing
Well,
since you were 13. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. Playing and writing and writing songs and writing stories and writing scripts. It's all the same kind of like mental play.
Right.
You kind of access the same place.
Right.
Um, and one of the funny things is like the first thing, of course, when I was young, I was writing stories, but when I got the guitar, I was writing songs, and then the bands would go on these tours, and I wasn't. Look, it was the age of AIDS,
Right.
and I was like, there ain't no way I'm getting into all that usual stuff. So I would take a notebook wherever we were, and I was the singer. And after the first couple of shows, if I was out all day hanging out, talking, by the time I got to the mic at 9, 10 o'clock at night, I had nothing left.
Yeah, I can imagine you were
So
just zonked out.
yeah, yeah, I just had no like voice, and that it was a real struggle. So I said, you know what, I'm going to kind of meditate during the day in a way, and I got a notebook, and I went and I'd go sit in parks or libraries of these towns, or even in somebody's house or something, and just write stuff.
Mm.
And so I started writing like stories and books and all kinds of stuff while I was kind of on the road,
Wow.
and lyrics too, because I didn't want to get into all that stuff, and
Right.
the
Right.
creation for me is what was exciting, and it's invigorating. I'm like, well, I've never been to Boston, I've never been to Baltimore, so I just walk around with a little notebook and plop down and write stuff and just soak in all that inspiration. And I think that was really kind of the catalyst of what kind of brought me to where I am today, because I found my colleges, going to on tour. We were in Boston, and I fell in love with some of the colleges up there. Just from wandering around between the shows, I'd walk in the admission office with my long freaking Chris Cornell hair, and I'd be like, "Hey, I want to go to school here," and they'd be like, "What?" I'm like, "No, look here's my notebook." Like, okay, and I applied to a bunch, and everybody thought I was kind of nuts, but I was like, "No, this is this is part of it. This is part of the journey." And I still always played music, even in college. I was still playing. Where we got signed to a small label, Jaybird Records, my first year of college, back when the labels actually signed bands and stuff. And the notoriety there, which was cool, is they put out Billy Squier's last record,
Oh, wow.
which definitely kind of a lot of people don't know Billy Squier anymore, but I was really, really psyched about that. So I was still doing that. I'd be going to college, and then they'd be like, "Hey, we're playing, Maine this weekend." So I was doing all that, and then I'm writing books, and then I got into the film industry in college too, because that's what you do when you're young and you have all the energy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to get into movie making too, so I did that, and PA'd on a couple of shows and learned that, and I was in the movie industry for a long time.
That's real big
Before I
in
moved.
Savannah too. Like honestly, I've only been in a couple of things, but it's really big here in Savannah. Um,
Yeah, Georgia Tech is really growing massively, I hear.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
That,
They've been it's so crazy, John, but they've been kicking around for the last 20 years or so, trying to build a studio here in Savannah. And
yeah,
but one of the things that they do, and one of the things I think with talking about being young and getting into different stuff like that, I think that's the cool thing about like creativity and
yeah.
being an artist, because you can get into music, you can get into writing, you get into acting and filmmaking, and I think that's one of the neat things about just living life and just kind of seeing what you like.
Yeah, and speaking of musicians, one of my favorites, Jimi Hendrix, not just for his music but for his philosophy. One of the things that I read a great line from him when I was real young, probably not much older than your son, and he said they were asking him about, oh, what do you think of all the old guard music and stuff, and he said, man, we're all just on different points on our timeline.
Yeah.
We're all just creators and accessing the same thing, and once we're on that timeline, we're all kind of the same. We're just at different points, and that always kind of like struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
and because it really does feel like whenever you're like, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you're 13 or 31 or 81, when you're creating and you get into that zone, you're timeless.
Yeah,
And it takes
exactly.
all that stuff away. Like I'm worried about whatever ails me. Suddenly, that creativity is like this serotonin blast or something that just kind of lifts you.
You
You
know,
know.
I had that feeling this week, John. It's so crazy because we got to do the station ID real quick. I'm sorry. Everybody, you're tuning in today to the Adam Messer Show here with my special guest, John Palisano. And we're live on WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And before I forget, if you are just now tuning in and you want to listen to this entire show, you can go to theadammessershow.com or on YouTube /Adam Messer and listen to the full podcast later on. John, real quick too, also not the sidebar here, but where is the best place where people could check out your books availability?
Well, I have my own website, which is cleverly titled johnpalisano.com,
Nice.
which links to all my creative projects.
Awesome. I
So
like
that's
that.
easy.
And Palisano is Palisano. Everybody, John
Yep,
Palisano.
just like the cereal.
Yeah. So, like, talking about the creative stuff and like that, just in the zone. Okay, so I'm not a musician, but I love music, and I've always been very supportive of like my son being a guitarist and my daughter's doing dance and that kind of stuff. And I'm a creative person too, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I have always loved ever since I found out about it, maybe 10 years ago, the space drum or the hang drum. And I'm mesmerized by the sound of it. And it's like one of those Jamaican steel drums, but the opposite. Instead of it being convex, it's concave. And
Cool.
yeah, and there's this one artist named Yuki who is out of Japan, and I just like when you're if you've ever been like scrolling on YouTube and you just kind of get down in the rabbit hole and you're like you come across something, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's that? That's how it was listening to her playing this. So this last week, I picked up a really inexpensive steel tongue drum, which it's not a hang drum, it's not the same thing, but those are like $1,000. I got this thing for like $30. And this week I was just sitting there with the little percussion sticks or whatever they call it. I'm just sitting there dinging it, like ding ding, just playing or whatever. And I kind of started getting into, and I've never had this feeling before. And this might be what you're talking about, where you're getting into the music. But I kind of got in this zone where I wasn't really thinking about anything. I was just kind of hitting the the little drum and listening to the tones and just kind of melting away. Kind of like when you go to the beach and you look out and you're like, yeah, like the worries and the cares of the world don't really even matter. You're just right there in the moment,
Totally.
And that's the first time I've ever experienced that with like music. Like because I don't really play music. It's just something I'm kind of dabbling around with, but I think it's fun.
Well, I think first of all, my first comment to you is congratulations, you are a musician. Number two,
Wow, I never thought of myself as a musician.
well, you are now. I mean, if you're hitting something and making a sound that you're manipulating, you're a musician.
I never thought about it like that. I just have been having fun with it. I think it's a lot of fun, but that's cool.
Well, here's a really amazing thing about music. I don't know if you know this or if any of our listeners know this, but one thing that's fascinating that music does that nothing else does is it creates different synapses and stuff in the brain to connect that don't do otherwise with any other kind of art form or anything. And they actually use this in therapy for people with mental degradation later in life and stuff. So when your finger touches something and it makes a noise and your ears hear it, your brain makes a certain connection that it doesn't make in any other circumstance. And this is science. This isn't hoodoo guru.
Oh yeah. I mean,
arts of music. If this is actually like real, like science, they've measured this, They continue to measure it. And one of the therapies they give to people who are suffering from like Alzheimer's is, hey, play piano. And it doesn't matter if they're like playing Beethoven, even if they're just banging something on it, something happens in the brain when
Wow.
the finger presses and the ears hear it. There's a connection between that part of the brain, and the more you do it, the more those connect. And people who are suffering have seen really good therapeutic effects from that.
Oh,
The
wow.
brain can rewire itself even that late, and that happens at every age. And I think that's what a lot of musicians talk about, like, oh, I get such a rush, when I
Mm.
play and stuff. And I think it's because those certain synapses are firing.
Maybe that's what it was good because I felt so serene and so at peace just doing that. And I think I might have done it for like, I don't even know because I wasn't, measuring the time or anything like that. But that, that is a good, I mean, like, I didn't know that that was what was going on in my brain. Maybe that's why I felt so relaxed.
Very likely, very likely.
It was so much fun. I mean, like, and it's just, I don't know what it is about that. Or like even listening to, you know, like Sebastian will play around the house or whatever. And, just listening to that live music, you feel that vibration from the guitar or whatever. And, it's
Yeah,
just, it's got a different feeling to it.
yeah. It's really it's a really profound experience. And yeah, I feel that, and that's why I think people are so hungry for live concerts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something unique happens there. That's not, no matter how good your home system is, being in the room with the music
That is something
is,
like, because I've had different musicians on the show, and I'm so tickled to find out that you're a musician. But I've had different musicians on the show, and I really appreciate, as a listener, I appreciate a person who can actually play an instrument and the ones who can sing. And I don't have anything against the synthesized stuff. I don't have anything against the digitalized stuff. Um, but there's a difference for me with, a person who can sing and can play versus, something that's kind of, hobbled together with, a program or something like that. And you can feel it when they're singing, you can feel it when they're playing for real, and, versus like something that's been synthesized to where it's just like perfect pitch on everything, or, the perfect tone or whatever. And, I don't know. I mean, that's probably the same feeling that you're talking about, like with the live concerts, because you get that energy that you don't get anywhere else.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's it definitely transcends past the people playing it and becomes this other thing, this wall of energy that people feel. And they're connecting with it too. If you're seeing Iron Maiden and they go into the Trooper and the whole place is jumping up and down at the same rhythm as the band, and you are too, you're all in sync, and
Yeah,
you get a freaking high from a moment like that. Or if you're at a thrash show or anything, or any kind of, if you're at a classical show and then the violinist just hits that run, man,
oh, I had that
you're
feeling
just
when we
like,
played
geez.
that tape, the Living Color Personality. I was like, it's from 1989, man. From 1989. It was a cassette single. They don't even make those anymore. And I
Right.
popped that thing in, and it's like, it starts off with, the little speech or whatever, and then it jumps right into that. And it just, it's like, oh, man, I remember, like, it kind of gave me that flashback of being a kid, again, when that song came out. I was born in 76, so I would have been like 13 when that came out.
Yeah.
And
Perfect age.
yeah, yeah. And I remember actually trading a kid some baseball cards for that cassette tape back when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
A pretty good trade.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Nothing against baseball cards, which we all love, but
yeah. No, man, it
um,
was so cool because as a kid, went through different stages or whatever. Into toys, and then comic books and Transformers and baseball cards, and then music was a big one. Music was always a big one for me. Uh,
yeah,
Listening to tapes and all, and back then it was tapes because it was so crazy. I was telling my son, and I've talked to some other younger people too, but I was telling him, I was like, when I was a kid, like, it was not cool to have records. It was like everything
no,
was CD or tapes,
yeah,
and like the vinyl now. I mean, it's amazing what they've been doing with this, the vinyl. I mean, it's
Yes.
just crazy what they've actually. I think I saw something, John. The last couple of years, they've been outselling. Vinyl's been outselling CDs.
Yeah.
Not MP3s, obviously, but vinyl's been outselling any other kind of physical form of media for music.
Yep.
And they're not just like records. They're also like these collectible things that you're like, oh man, like this Metallica one. Man, Creeping Death. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I've never even seen a CD of Creeping Death, much less like a vinyl.
Yeah. And
So,
it's I think that every generation understands that the benefit of something tangible. And you're holding that magic in your hands when you have a Metallica 45, as opposed to just playing it on your Mac or your PC or whatever. And there's a big difference in the physical process of putting the needle down. And honestly, I'm very skeptical. And I've read so much up on the science of digital recording versus analog.
yeah.
And there's a certain compression that happens with vinyl that's different than digital. Digital doesn't capture it. I AB'd like a month ago, just for a fun science project. I said, okay, I'm going to put on one of my favorite records. I put on Exile on Main Street from the Rolling Stones.
Nice.
And I queued up iTunes and I queued up the vinyl, and I was A-Bing it, and I'll be tooting that Exile on Main Street sounded very different on vinyl.
Oh yeah.
It sounded,
John,
they both sounded good, but it was different. It was weird,
Can you give us a laydown of what you mean by ABN?
Okay, so I had the vinyl, and I had a set of speakers. One was going into my computer, and then I just put the cable into a record player.
Oh, okay.
And I just took it in and out, and I had the same song going.
You could tell the difference of the quality.
Well, it wasn't even a quality thing. It was like, I want to say it was a different mix.
Oh.
But it was like there was different frequencies. I could still hear everything clear as a bell between the two, but there was a different like sauciness to either one. Like the digital one sounded clear and bright and it's three-dimensional, but then it was almost like I had another camera on the same kind of recording session when I put on the vinyl. It was kind of like I was watching the Stones from the front.
Yeah.
And then I was watching it from Charlie Watts' seat, when I put on the vinyl. It wasn't like a different, it was just weird. Or maybe I stepped 30 feet back in the room or something, but it was still just as clear. So it was
I think that's the difference between like stereo and digital. Because I noticed the same thing. Like we have a radio station here in town. It's talk radio. I don't really listen to it a lot, but they have an FM station and they have an AM station. It's the same station. They broadcast simultaneously on AM and FM. And the AM has, total different feel than FM. And that's the feeling that like as you're describing, listen to that, because I've done the same thing where I've listened to like this cassette tape. It's not vinyl, but it has a different sound to it than the digital.
Definitely.
And I noticed that too with some of the older media, even CDs, even though those are digital, they sound different to me with the WAV file than an MP3 file. Just
Definitely.
Even the way that the digital is set up.
Definitely.
So, hey, we got to do the mid-hour station break, John.
All right.
Yeah, man, I'm having a lot of fun talking with you about your music and all. It's pretty cool. When we come back, let's talk some more about like your books and stuff too.
All right.
That'd be cool. All right, everybody. You're tuning in today to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. And here are some station announcements for you.
This portion of WRUU Savannah Soundings programming is provided by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have available online ordering and curbside delivery, and now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 12 to 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
Do you own a small business? Do you want to get your message out to a dedicated, loyal, and active audience? Then make WRUU part of your company's marketing strategy. Our listeners aren't just passively listening to us in the background. When your company underwrites with WRUU, you're getting their attention. And you're also supporting Savannah's only community radio station. It's an act of both self-interest and community spirit. Connect your brand with WRUU's passion, spunk, and hyper-local focus by choosing an underwriting package that fits your company's budget. Email underwriting@wruu.org for more information. Thank you.
The Live Oak Public Library System offers local residents access to hundreds of thousands of movies, television programs, albums, audiobooks, ebooks, and digital comic books for free on your streaming television and mobile devices through the Hoopla app. Supported devices include Roku, Fire, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android, among others. The selection is vast. All you'll need is your library card. Find the Hoopla app on your device and more information at liveoakpl.org.
This portion of WRUU's programming is brought to you by listeners and by the 2021 Savannah Jazz Festival. Due to the moratorium on large outdoor events in Savannah, the Savannah Jazz Festival has been moved to Savannah Station. Admission will continue to be free, but a lottery will be conducted for tickets. Ranky Tanky is the headliner for Sunday, September 25th, with Grant Green Jr., Kenny Banks, and Don Braden performing earlier in the day. For more information on the ticket lottery, follow the Savannah Jazz Festival on their Facebook and Instagram pages.
All right, everybody, and we're back with John Palisano on the radio with us. John, thank you for being with me on the show today. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's been a blast so far.
Awesome. Hey, Bass, you want to play some music for us?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. So here's Sebastian Messer, everybody, playing some live music here in the WRU studios. Awesome, Bass. Thank you.
Beautiful work.
Thank you very much, Bass. And yeah, I tell you what, John, I think it's so cool talking about you being a musician and the creativity side, because I had no idea. I've never really looked into the science of how music plays, but I know it's so crazy though, because everything, energy, matter, all that has its own vibration, right? And
Sure.
and I've always felt, I know this might be a little esoteric, but I've always felt like music was a universal language that we have. Much like math, music is like a universal language that we have, and that we're able to share a message without speaking a word. So I always thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and you're onto something, and music and math are very closely related. If not, one wouldn't exist without the other, really,
Yeah.
basically, according to many theories. So you're onto something there.
Well, it's interesting. I feel like when people like food, food is something that you can share. Music's another thing, that is kind of universal that you can share with people. and it bridges a lot of gaps. It brings people closer. I mean, like our conversation today is completely different than what I was thinking we were going to be talking about, and I think it's so cool because like it's such a neat little offshoot. Because I had no idea that you're a musician, and I think it's so cool because that's part of who you are.
Yeah, it's a big part of who I am, and and what's really interesting to me is that there are so many authors who are also musicians, and there's so many musicians who want to write or who want to get who are good at other fields or who are really good painters. I mean, if you look at famous musicians, how many are great painters? Like John Mellencamp comes to mind immediately. He does some phenomenal painting work, and Joni Mitchell's paintings are unbelievable. Paul Stanley from Kiss is a great painter. It's crazy. You're like, what? But it makes sense, doesn't it? That these very talented people are not just going to be talented at writing songs. They're going to be really good at a lot of creative minded things. So it's really fascinating. The other thing about creativity that I really want to talk about is that it's not just limited to what we think of as the fine arts. And I think that there's creativity everywhere. And I think that as artists, we can kind of get lost in our own self-importance, if I'm to be honest.
Yeah, we all like to drink our own tea, don't we?
But yeah, and it's important, you need to kind of, I know there's this, the catchphrase of people not feeling, real and feeling like they're imposters. So it's important to feel like, you're doing, following your calling correctly and following that. But I think also there's such creativity in the world if you look outside of the arts for inspiration. People who design cars are ridiculously creative.
Oh, yeah.
People who make food and solve food problems, that's creativity. People who are working in medicine are extremely creative. Scientists are the name of the game is creative solutions to finding one that works. Let's think outside the box. What could work? Maybe this weird plant, if we crush it into a pill, will solve something. What? And it does. Whoa, so it's like, that's creativity. It's everywhere. Somebody had to think of it. Somebody had to think of the wheel. Somebody had to think of a computer. And they weren't just, playing rock and roll, which is, equally as important in my book. Mm-hmm. But I find a lot of inspiration in that too. And I look at, the people around me, and everybody's brilliant at what they love.
That's actually something that, a topic that's come up in the past where people will say, "Oh, I'm not an artist," or "I'm not a this," or "I'm not a that." Like earlier, I was saying, "Well, I'm not really a musician," and you were like, "Well, yeah, you are." I never thought about it like that. First of all, you're the first person that's ever said, "Yeah, you are a musician if you're making music." But for me, it's the same kind of thing because we are surrounded by art. We are surrounded by creation, and when and I haven't heard this in a long time, but I have heard it before where people will say, you should get a real job or you should get, whatever. And I think to myself, okay, well, did you design those boots that you're wearing or the pants that you're wearing or the shirt that you're wearing? Did you design the wrapper around the burger that you're eating? Did you design the car that you're driving? These are all works of art. These are all sure. Functional art, but they're creative. I mean, if we didn't like art, we would have gray rectangular box style vehicles that are just utilitarian and not creative, not beautiful works of machinery, and that's something that I tell people all the time, like we're so inundated with art that we're almost blind to it or deaf to it, when it comes to like music or something like that. And I think that's why something that's new and different and differentiates itself from the normal, everyday run of the mill, whatever you see. And then they're like, "Oh, well, that's different. Let me look at that. Let me check that out. Let me go on here and look at this. Why, I feel like that we're like you're saying about creativity. Like I feel like we are all storytelling beings. That's like the core of us, and we express those stories in our art, in our work, in our things that we make and create. I mean, the way that we even, the way that we even express ourselves when we're talking, to each other, like even in like meta talk, like how's your day? Good. Oh, good. How are you doing? I'm fine. How are you? Fine. Even in that meta talk, like we've kind of crafted this little system of nonsensical talk just to be able to mitigate through a scenario or situation, without
Sure.
going crazy. you know so I find it really interesting. And then with you, and I kind of want to segue into with your writing. You you have been a writer pretty much your whole life. What got you into and made you decide that you wanted to publish? And then, you know from there, what brought you into the realm of wanting to be part of the Horror Writers Association, and then also taking on the responsibility of becoming the president of the organization?
Wow. Okay.
So
Well, I'm
kind of like
glad
a
we have.
segue there. So I'm going to turn my mic off so you could talk a little bit about like all these things. But I just want to kind of give you like a hey, how did like this genesis to to this
All right. So I'm glad we have some time here because, and I'll try to make this as brief as I can.
Oh no,
um,
you can share as much as you want or as little as you want. It's all good. We got plenty of time.
all right. All right. Well, I remember distinctly, I believe I was in the first grade and we had a writing assignment. And the writing assignment was the classic, here's a picture from a magazine, write a story about it and go. Right. And we'll all read our stories at the end. It's like just one of those fun exercises you do.
Yeah.
And I had one of a pilot getting into an F-16. And my story was about a pilot who was the president who would save the world from these creatures or something. And the class loved it. And for the first time, I had people were coming up to me and talking to me, and they were, I like the part where he zapped the alien in the face, or something. I don't quite remember, and I felt like, wow, this is cool. If I write stories, I could connect with people. And that was it. That was the seed. I was hooked from that moment on. And
I
I
want to
just
share
kept,
something real quick too with that, because I love that. My little cousin John, her name is Lucy Bone, and my little cousin Sarah, it's her daughter.
all
She
right.
is in second grade. I think she's going into third grade this year, but she won the Young Georgia Writers Award last year for her
Wow.
story about it. It was called The Dream.
Ooh.
And so, like, she was just on the show like maybe a month and a half ago or whatever. But the same thing that you're talking about, like where I was asking her, I was like, well, what do you like writing? Why do you like to write? And she's like, I love telling these stories. And I think that is so wonderful because as a child, like I wrote little stories too when I was a kid. I actually won a couple awards as a kid writing stories. And I think that's so cool because like that thing that you're, like you were just talking about with the F-16 and the pilot and the, becoming the president and saving the world. Like, dude, I was just thinking about Independence Day. Like, that's that story of Independence Day. You remember with Will Smith and all that?
Yeah, I definitely, that was not lost on me when that movie came out. I
I
got a
bet
kick out
not.
of it.
I bet
I was
not. I
like,
bet you're like, wait a minute, I wrote this 20 years ago. I wrote this 10 years ago. I wrote this 5 years ago. Whatever. But I just thought it was so cool because Lucy was on the show and I mean, like that. I feel like it's so important because we have, and I know this is kind of a tangent off of that story, but I just feel like it's so important for our youth and our young people that we have not forced it upon them, but we have kind of forced it upon them, all the digital stuff and the phones and the this and the that. And I feel like writing stories or telling stories or sharing with that, connecting with real people and real world stuff is so important to to share with who we are and also to disconnect from the technology. So I love that that's how you started off talking about your storytelling genesis here.
yeah. And, I think it's a really valuable gift that the one generation gives to the other to foster that kind of um, openness and access. And, because again, going back to, how creativity is everywhere, even if that kid gets that exercise and they're like, I liked doing that. I liked the feeling creativity, but what I really think needs fixing is refrigerators because I hate my refrigerator. And one day I'm going to make the best refrigerators ever, and they're going to be awesome, or whatever floats their boat. But giving children that access and that freedom to kind of say, hey, this is a part of you that can really, this is what it's about. I think that's just invaluable, and I love that it's just passed on from generation to generation. The story trees, keep growing, and that's wonderful about your niece, and just that's just really heartwarming to hear.
I was amazed. I mean, because she's 8, and she is just like full of life, and and I think that's one of the cool things about like creativity, that it helps you to unleash those burdens that we have in life.
Yeah.
And it's so neat to see someone that's young, and they haven't had to. I mean, not saying that they haven't had difficulties or problems that they've had to deal with, but it's just so neat to see that innocence of youth, with that passion of creativity. And I think it's really cool to hear you talking about that. That's how you got started, and that's how I got started. I was a little kid, writing stories in school, and so it was so fun.
Yeah, and it really gives you something to build upon later in life, and I think that's really, we so many people are down on school, but then you look back and you realize, how much it molded you in good ways and bad, and it kind of steered you in different directions. And I think young school, when you're in elementary school, everyone loves elementary and some in middle school. And then by high school, you're kind of over it. Most kids, I think, except for those
Yeah.
kids who are good at calculus at 16 somehow. But there's like four in the entire
Sebastian is
world,
taking
but
calculus right now. He's actually really good at calculus.
wow. Well, bless his heart.
I know, right?
I
I'm
don't
like,
know how he does it.
I don't
envy
either, because I
you.
was like, son, I was good at math, but that was beyond my level.
I envy him because that looks like a new language and a cipher I just couldn't crack no matter what. But God bless anybody who can, who's good at that. I really, hats off to them.
It was the other day, he was talking to me about these problem sets he had to do, John, and I'm listening, we're talking and whatever, and and I'm following him, and then like you know that part where they just they're talking about like just shop, they're just talking shop with you, and it's normal for them, but then you're like, your eyes start glazing over because you're like, I'm totally lost here. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have nothing that I can relate it to.
Yeah, it's like they suddenly turn into a galactic alien speaking the native tongue, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I knew. I was like, this kid really understands calculus, and I'm like, I was like, okay. So I just think it's
cool,
funny, man. That's so cool.
And, isn't it amazing that our children just have different kind of, they're not carbon copies.
No, right?
People. And you wonder, like, where did that come from? Because that's not even anywhere in my gene pool, but somehow this kid has got this gift for something, and it's just magic when that happens. It's so cool and fascinating and interesting. And you're like,
yeah, that is, I think, a parenthood. That's part of one of the wonders of, like, hey, where did that come from?
Yeah, and it's really it makes you, it's just delightful, and it's really a wonderful surprise when those things manifest.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So as an adult, you got into the band and traveling and stuff, and you said you carried a notebook around.
Yeah.
You started writing these stories as an adult, because like obviously childhood that would kind of light the fire, and then writing songs and stuff like that. It's really cool. And how did that kind of progress to being an author?
Well, I'll rewind a little. So from elementary school, from that moment forward, I was always writing stories, and it's been my safe place since that age, and I just always was writing and reading like a lunatic, and I'm lucky. Both my parents were big readers and big creative people, and encouraged that. But they encouraged, but you have to actually love it to actually keep doing it. And I loved it. I loved writing stories, and always have. And I loved, doing that. I wrote a novel by the time I said it was a novel when I was like 13 or 14. It's about 120 pages.
Oh wow.
And I just kept going and going and going. And even when I was playing in the bands and doing everything else, I always wrote fiction
Wow.
and nonfiction too. And, ever since, one thing I would encourage any young person or anybody in particular is do work at the school paper, work at the school poetry book thing or whatever they have. Anything that's writing words, work at. If the principal, like me, says, hey, can you help me write the morning announcements? As part of a detention. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And,
that old Johnny
not...
Carson and Ed McMahon. Ha ha ha. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. So if you help me with the morning announcements, John, you won't have detention this week for listening to Van Halen
cough.
in English class when you weren't supposed to. Okay, deal. So, even that was a great study in how to write. Oh my God, we have 3 minutes. How do we put everything in there? And I learned a lot in that 2 weeks. Like how that was a great experience. It turned out at first I was like, oh my God, it's punishment, and then nowadays I'm like, well, this is great because I had to like boil down the day's news and the announcements to less than 3 minutes with this dude.
Yeah.
And it was just a great exercise in brevity and getting to the point and working under fire like that.
I was on the school newspaper staff, and I was the front page editor actually.
Whoa.
And then funny enough, John, like I just celebrated here in August, I just celebrated my 7th year of working as a freelance journalist for our local newspaper, the Savannah Morning News.
Wow.
And I've been a journalist for the last 7 years, but I agree with you. Like I get 500 words copy space usually for my articles, and
wow.
You have to, brevity and clarity, are two of my favorite things. So
yeah.
I agree with you. Like, you have to get crafty sometimes, and sometimes 500 words is like just a sand piece, pebble of sand on the beach, and then other times it's like the ocean.
Yeah.
So you're
totally.
like, you're struggling with like the first 50 words, and you're like, how am I gonna put 500 words into this? And other times I'm like, man, I've got 3,000 words in this article, and how am I gonna cut it down to 500?
Right.
So yeah, I love that. That's so cool.
And then when you get to your fiction and you see calls that are certain word lengths, you know exactly how to operate.
Yeah, that's something I'm still navigating because I'm still a newer author. And that's something that I have been learning with writing and editing and working with other authors, is that it is a different, it's different than academic writing or business writing. It's different than journalism. Fiction it's similar, but it's not the same. It's almost, you can use the skill sets, you can, traverse it over or whatever, but it's like with a song, a song is a poem. Like people have told me, oh, I don't really like poetry. I'm like, well, do you like music? Do you like songs? Yes. Well, that's poetry, but when you write a song, it's going to be different than a poem because of the way it's structured, Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where they help, it kind of parlays together, but at the same time, it's definitely different craft in some respects,
Oh, definitely. And that's another amazing gift if you learn poetry and the forms of poetry. If you're a fiction writer, it can only help you. And there's more to poetry than rhyming poetry.
Yeah.
And I strongly urge any writer to take a poetry course early on and embrace it. And even if it's not your thing to be a poet, you're going to learn things and how to craft sentences and words that you'll carry with you forever.
Something that Ray Bradbury said that really stuck with me was, if you want to become a better writer, read a poem, a short story, and an essay a night for 1,000 nights.
Yeah.
And, I did that for about 75 days, but I didn't do it for 1,000 nights. But it stuck with me because I was like, those, a poem, a short story, and an essay, there are 3 different styles of writing, 3 different styles of storytelling.
Yeah.
But you can use all of those in writing. with
Yep.
either nonfiction or fiction. And
Absolutely.
we have to wrap this hour up, John. Where's the best
All right.
place that people can check out information about your books?
They can go to www.johnpalisano.com, and it has all the information you'd ever want to know about me.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right. So, folks, hang tight. We'll be back at the 4 o'clock hour. And if you missed any of this, you can just go on your favorite podcast app, theadammessershow.com, and then just search for John Palisano. It'll be up there tonight, and it should be processed by tomorrow. So, John Palisano is the musician, author, and Horror Writers Association president, among other things, right? So, awesome.
Sure.
Hang tight, everybody. We'll be back in a few minutes.